Come on, are you telling me that you think the world can be saved by just 7 people?
I don't know what's got you down, but please cheer up.
Thank you. If the worst happens, I'll be glad to leave the future to the kids who see the world in the way that you do.
How's it going, everyone, and welcome to the channel that can't seem to break away from Union Cross theories and discussions. Look, if you have any problems with it, take it up with my lawyer. By the way, I'm the lawyer, as well as the judge, jury, and executioner. And a verdict is, this is my channel, so let me talk. Today we're gonna be peeling yet another layer to the Master of Masters' plans, and how the Union leaders were doomed for failure from the start. That's right, none of these characters' survival was part of the plan, and they were meant to be sacrificial pawns in an attempt to trap the darkness. But if that was the case, what exactly led them to surviving? Or rather, more importantly, how were they able to outsmart the Master of Masters? Because even the foretellers weren't able to break out of his trap. So how did these novice Keyblade wielders below them do the impossible and oppose fate? All of these answers shall be answered today, and there is a lot to get through. So without further ado, let us begin, shall we? Now, of course, as we all know, the story of Union Cross did not end on the climactic Keyblade War, but rather there was a lot of events that were to come after. And I mean a lot. By the way, I'd just like to clear up that I use Kingdom Hearts Union Cross as the name for the entirety of the Key story. So if you see I'm talking about things pertaining to Key, Unchained Key, back cover, etc., but calling it Union Cross, that is why. Just easier on the brain, you know? Before the final clash of the Keyblade War, the Master tasked Ava with gathering the finest Keyblade wielders around and send them away from the Keyblade War to survive, thus keeping the light alive. These wielders will come to be known as the Dandelions, and they would have their memories altered as to if the Keyblade War had never happened. However, there was a select group of individuals who were handpicked by Ava, or rather the Master, specifically to keep their memory and all knowledge of events that have transpired. They would come to be known as the new Union leaders, and they would essentially be the replacement for the foretellers, leading the Dandelions into the future ahead. Those chosen are Ephemer, Skuld, Brain, Laurium, and Strelitzia. However, when Ventus was under the influence of one of the true darknesses, Strelitzia, through pure chance, was struck down, and Ventus would take her spot as the 5th Union leader. Now, at the time of that reveal, many suspected that Ventus was the virus that was implemented into play here. That being said, when we hear the term virus, we immediately think of something negative. The word itself carries a negative connotation with it. However, that does not necessarily mean that it is negative to us. And in this case, the virus actually ends up working in our favor and is a key component to the Union leader's success. The virus, of course, being Brain. Let us go back to when Ava is selecting candidates to be the new Union leaders of the Dandelions. Brain was relaxing on the signature hill gazing over Daybreak Town when Ava approaches him. Getting straight to the point, she tells him that she wants him to become one of the new Union leaders, to which Brain shows no interest. He then asks what of the other 4 Union leaders, to which Ava expresses that she can't tell him that info yet. Connecting the dots as to why they must be ignorant to the other leaders until after the Keyblade War, Brain makes the deduction that it seems they were being used as pawns in someone else's game. When he says this, Ava expresses joy and eagerly sits down next to him, asking what he would do if the fate of the world had already been determined for him. Brain says that that would be horrible, and Ava, still with a smile on her face, asks why. To which Brain responds, life would be no fun if everything was already determined for you. But what if it wasn't decided for you? What if you only knew of what would happen next? Referring, of course, to the Book of Prophecies. If you knew what was coming next, wouldn't you be able to change what happens? But if you change what happened, wouldn't the change be reflected in the book? Would it have even occurred at all? Ava lets out a chuckle as Brain's gears start turning. Ava had piqued his interest, but now she has had his full attention. Seeing Brain's responses to the discussions, she deemed him worthy of the Book of Prophecies, to which she also places a message that tells of all the other Union leaders the Master told her to choose, and who specifically to give the book to. She then puts it specifically on the page in which the Union leaders' fates are written. Keep this in mind. She tells Brain she hopes he receives receives her message when the time comes, to which Brain responds, "Don't worry, I've already got your message." The message, of course, being defy fate. Break free of these chains that shackle us to this predetermined outcome. Do what I cannot. It may be too late for us, the foretellers, but there is still hope for you. The same way that the Master of Masters gave Xehanort the push he needed to pursue his goals, Ava gave Brain the jumpstart that he needed. Because of course, any one of the Union leaders could do it, but not every one of them would be capable of succeeding. We are going against the Master of Masters here. All of the Union leaders have shown that they do not believe in things being set in stone, but the only one who would be able to match the intelligence level of the Master of Masters would be Brain. And even then, it would be a stretch. He would become the virus planted by Ava to infect the Master's plans, an attempt to oppose fate. No. They needed to oppose fate, because if they didn't, their story would end here. During the events of Union Cross, the Union leaders come across the information that they have never returned to the real world, and that they were being trapped in Data Daybreak Town. This whole time, they thought that they were in the real world. However, due to the events happening, such as Skuld and Ven seeing Ava's glitching figure, all signs point to them being in the data world, and they were trapped. Ven voices concern, asking, "Why is this happening to us?" Brain then responds, saying that if he had to guess, someone is behind all of this. Someone has made this Data Daybreak Town specifically for the Dandelions. Someone made it so that they cannot leave. This data world was meant to be cut off from the very beginning, just another means to an end. That someone is without a doubt, of course, the Master of Masters. But why would the Master want to trap them here? I mean, was he not the one who gave Ava the specific order to gather the Dandelions to survive the war and carry on the light? Well, it is as Brain just said, it is a means to an end. They were meant to be bait to lure in the true darknesses. We all know of the Master's true plans to destroy the darkness. This plan heavily relying on the involvement of unreality, the place where neither darkness nor light prevail. But even though this was his ultimate end goal, that does not mean that there weren't other plans in motion. If anything, we should look at this Quadratum plan as a backup in case all the other ones fail. However, he would need time to prepare. We are in a completely different reality from our own, and the darkness was closing in quickly. We needed to stall them, and that's when the Dandelions come into play. When the Master is describing the darkness to Luxu, he states that they are the most unpredictable, that nobody could guess what they will do. But out of everything, there is one thing that we know for sure, and that is that they have a strong aversion to those of pure heart. In a previous video, I talked about how Strelitzia lured in the darkness with this. However, as we all know, the darkness would not stop at her, and they would continue on to antagonize the rest of the Union leaders. The Master tasked Ava with gathering all the finest Keyblade wielders together, sending them to the data world. With no means to escape, all of the brightest lights of the world were trapped in one area, serving as a homing beacon for the true darknesses, where they would also be trapped with the Dandelions in the data world. Best case scenario, it actually works and the darkness is taken care of. Worst case scenario is that it may not stop them forever, but at the very least it gives us time to prepare for the day of ruin that will arrive yet again. A necessary sacrifice for the sake of light. Ironic, isn't it? On the page that foretold the Union leaders' fates, it stated their end, which is why Ava specifically placed the message on that page, to draw Brain's attention to it, beginning the chess game between the Union leaders and the so-called fate the Master had determined for them. This explains why the Master shrugged off the Union leaders' safety numerous times during his discussion with Luxu. It's because it was all a part of the plan. Speaking of Luxu even states within the Kingdom Hearts 3 secret reports that the Union leaders were not all supposed to escape. Of course, this excerpt is signed unknown, but reading between the lines, it doesn't take a lot to realize that this is Luxu speaking. Allow me to read a part of this excerpt for you. One of the five is an imposter, someone the Master did not choose. They represent a virus in the program he so carefully wrote. The virus has begun a strange undertaking, a reckless plot to allow the five to escape into another world line. Surely such a thing can't be possible. I mean, we're talking about the same trick that allowed the Dandelions to transfer to the other world lines after the Keyblade War, but these children are no masters. They haven't the means. Unless, of course, a certain lady of magic summoned here from the future knows more than I do. The whole Union leader thing was supposed to be by the books. Are these new events just another phase in the Master's grand plan? Again, looking at the details of I have seen the Keyblade War through and passing my Keyblade down to one of the Union leaders, as well as the mentioning of the Master's grand plan, who, again, the Master only told to one person, this has to be Luxu. And the method to transfer world lines that he is speaking of is not the method in which the Union leaders escaped at the end of Union Cross. He is not talking about the pods. The method in which Luxu is talking about is the method that Master Yen Sid had sent Mickey to Scalad Kylum to discover.
When I was still serving as a Keyblade Master, It was known that the ancient masters had crossed over into another world. And you, Mickey.
Yes!
I task you with the investigation of this new world, and how it is related to the ancient Keyblade Masters.
But how?
You'll begin in the world of Scala ad Caelum.
However, as he said, a certain lady of magic knew more than he did. Remember, the only reason the Union leaders even knew of the pods being an escape route was because Laurium overheard Maleficent's plans of escaping, and Maleficent only knew that because of the true darkness is telling her, so that would explain why Luxu would not have known of this method. He also was not given a copy of the Book of Prophecies, therefore he doesn't know if the change with Strelitzia and Ventus was a part of the plan. Little did he know, however, that Ventus was not the virus deconstructing the Master's plans. If we look throughout the course of Union Cross, Ventus helped, sure, but he did not do anything that specifically allowed the Union leaders to escape. If anything, he carried the true darkness with him that act as an opposing force later on in the story. The virus in this situation, again, is Brain. Brain took the initiative to analyze everything within the world, researching every little bit of detail, seeing the obvious trap that had been left for them, and deconstructing the program meant to trap them that the Master had built, aka the data world. Even in the end, Brain stayed behind to allow everyone to escape. They represent a virus in the program he so carefully wrote. The virus has begun a strange undertaking, a reckless plot to allow the Five to escape into another world line. And I didn't want to bring this point up until after I explained a little bit, but Brain quite literally says it himself. It is even in this moment where he explains that he will not let them be trapped here. He will deconstruct this program, opposing fate. Ava changed the Master's plans to give the Book of Prophecies to Strelitzia by giving it to Brain instead, and placing him amongst the Union leaders. Because again, based on his responses to her questions, Brain is the obvious choice for opposing the Master. If we were to take the foretellers, for example, believing everything in the Book of Prophecies to be certain, then Brain was on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And regardless of if it was the Master of Masters or not, he would go against it. A virus placed within the Master's plans to dismantle it from the inside out, and dismantle it he shall. Though it wouldn't be without a little bit of help. I say let's look past the virus in the literal sense and look at it from a different perspective. As I said before, Brain was indeed the smartest out of the Union leaders by far, but there were many instances in which the other Union leaders pulled through where he could not, and it is all because of one thing: they all share a common mindset. The virus is the ideology that Ava as well as Brain and the other Union leaders all share, that being that fate is not absolute. Nobody is in control of your fate. You are free to choose. Let's go back to Brain and Ava's discussion. Ava asked, is fate truly absolute? If you knew exactly what was coming next, would you be able to change the outcome? It is this question that she would hand off to Brain and the Union leaders to answer. Again, written on the page in which she placed the paper was the Union leaders' fates, and those fates were to be trapped in the Data Daybreak Town, planned to be closed off right from the very beginning by the Master of Masters. The cards have been dealt, and through a series of struggles going against them, the Union leaders would soon answer that question, escaping from the data world, continuing to live on, changing the course of their destiny dramatically. This ideology, however, would also continue on down the timeline, all the way down to our baby boy Sora. Just like how the Union leaders were to perish, the Guardians were to fail as well. But as we all know, Sora altered the course of fate drastically.
Hey, I've already restored 6 hearts. What's one more?
But that's not how it's supposed to work at all. The power of waking is meant to be used to wake and restore sleeping hearts, not to restore them after they've completely faded away from existence. You've done that 6 times before, and as a result, you've managed to greatly alter the course of history itself. You've broken a nature taboo.
By the end of the war, not a single casualty on the side of light, and instead it was darkness that had expired. And it is because of this mindset that Sora will pose a natural threat to not only Xehanort, but the Master of Masters as well. We even see Sora state this directly to Xehanort after defeating him.
The world needs someone to stand up and lead. Someone strong, to stop the weak from polluting the world with their endless darkness. Someone to dictate their destiny.
A real leader knows that destiny is beyond his control, and accepts that.
As you all know, by this point, I am a fan of parallels, and this is no exception. Sora and the Guardians versus Xehanort, Brain and the Union Leaders versus the Master, both having their fates controlled and dictated for them, both refusing to live in the palm of someone's hand, refusing to be pawns in someone else's game.
You can drop the facade.
Facade?
On that land shall darkness prevail and light expire. A prospective Keyblade Master should know this.
If you say so.
The gazing eye sees the fate of the world. The future. It's already been written.
Really? I'm not so sure about that. Besides, who's to say I can't change it? And maybe light will prevail.
Pretty confident. But things aren't in your favor.
Perhaps, but unlike darkness, there is more to light than meets the eye. You might be surprised.
Oh, I hope so.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of yet another video. For those of you that care, did any of you watch the Final Fantasy VII anniversary event? Best 10 minutes of any Final Fantasy fan's life. I bring this up because I actually have quite a few Final Fantasy VII remake theories that I, for whatever reason, haven't put together. Maybe now's the time. Should I let them rock? I think it's time to start spicing the channel up with a little bit more than just Kingdom Hearts theories. Perhaps diving into theories for other things. Maybe some playthroughs, or even live streams. What do you guys think I should do? I don't know, I'll have a video discussing this stuff at a later date. But for now, I am starving, and I got some Chinese food calling my name. It's been Val. I'll catch you guys in the next one, and I'm out. Later.